Alright guys, TacticalRab here again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. A major update to Modern Warfare 2 yesterday with a nerf to both the Vaznev and the TAQ, the two weapons that are most commonly used right now in the present meta. Is anything going to change them now to the World Championship with other SMGs potentially being viable? What does this mean? And also Clay with a few words for Zinni, we'll see in a few minutes time as well. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, unfortunately, no Scump operator yet in the game, but what we do have is two operators from Methodz and Tim the TAQ Man. First of all, gotta say, these are spectacularly done. And, I mean, yeah, I'll just show you guys the actual skin itself and some of the camos here on the weapons. Just absolutely beautiful work. And it's got to be said, if we could do this for other players, obviously, it would be great to have Scump in there, done so much for Call of Duty. It does feel a little bit strange that, you know, Methodz, okay, Methodz has been around Call of Duty for a lot of the time, but he's not particularly involved in it in the present day. And, you know, Tim the TAQ Man, it's cool that they got it right, don't get me wrong, but I think from a, you know, competitive fan perspective, we're going to be a little bit biased. Would be nice to have a Crim 6 in there as well, right? I know the hitbox would be massive, but, you know, down the line it would be cool. And just stuff like this is, you know, people always talk about esports monetization, how do you make it work? The more stuff you can get from the teams and from those players into the game, so, you know, microtransactions, but actually gives back to the players and to the teams. But that's a way to make this work, right? And I thought it was a nice tweet from Methodz here, actually looking back at when he started streaming those chows. This is Advanced Warfare. Kind of funny on the other team is Envoy here going 1-8. So Bones replies and says, nah, no way you did this to me like this. But still pretty cool stuff. And this was Tim the TAQ Man, I thought was honestly even better. I mean, look at the artwork on his tattoos and stuff they put into the game. They spent way more time on making this than they do on actually making the game good. But, you know, it's still good stuff, right? Just to show as a bit of a groundwork here, right? To see what could actually be possible if they were to do this for other creators in the future. And even the artwork on his, you know, the tattoos and stuff, I'm guessing translated here in part onto the camos is just really good going. So yeah, I thought this was really nice to see. But the other part of this update was this piece, which is the patch note on the TAQ 56 and the Vaznev 9K, both nerfed in terms of the maximum damage range. Now it's got to be said, I don't know quite how significant this is. I know people have trialed it out, and I know that last night in challenges, some of the challenges were already starting to use the Vel or the MP7 and the Lackman, which is basically the MP5. So, you know, those two SMGs have been on the precipice of being viable in certain situations, but the Vaznev's always just been too good. Now, you nerf the Vaznev max damage range. Obviously, it's difficult to say if that's the maximum damage range, then, you know, like how impactful actually is that, right? We'll see. Exclusive Ace, I'm sure we'll go over the video soon. And in terms of the TAQ 56, is that going to go out of the meta? I kind of doubt it, but it's an interesting time for it to happen, right? Because we're going into the second half of the Major 5 qualifiers. There's not far from now to the World Championship. The pros probably don't want the meta to change. They've practiced with things as they have been, but we know that players in the past, the likes of Envoy, for example, in Modern Warfare 2019, pulled out the Uzi towards the end of the title, and that was actually a very viable weapon towards the end there. And often, there's weapons that are viable, but they're not really tried by the pros because they're kind of stuck in their ways. And then when one thing changes like this, all of a sudden they will try the other gun, and they're feeling, actually, hang on a second, this gun is pretty damn good. And maybe that could be the case with the MP7. I don't expect anything to change. It depends how drastic this is. I've heard mixed reports on how big of a deal this actually is. Exclusive Ace, I imagine, is going to do a video today breaking it all down. Must say that when this initially got nerfed back in, you know, 15th of February, there was an announcement that, you know, the Vaznev was getting nerfed. And the reality is nothing really changed on it. It was negligible in core modes. So, you know, it makes you wonder whether it's going to be any different this time. But you would think that now they've tried to nerf it, you know, probably something is going to happen. And it's definitely confusing timing in one regard, just because, well, Ghosty even just said the other day, GA the Vaznev, right? He wants it gone for the meta. As I talked about at the time, next year, who knows what's going to happen in terms of what the meta's going to be. Are we going to get more MP7s and others in action? And Infinity Ward might have decided now's the time to switch up the meta and go for a different look. Now, you know, it's frustrating in a way because from the competitive scene's perspective, now is probably not the time to have a potential game-changing meta update. It might not change that much, right? As I say, the patch notes, probably the pros will still go for the Vaz and the TAQ, but who knows, right? Maybe other weapons are viable now. And I know that this was a concern of the teams. When these camos and team packs and blueprints are getting put together earlier this year, there was concern, and understandably, that are Infinity Ward even aware this is happening, and will they just nerf the Vaznev into the ground by the time the blueprint arrives? The blueprint arrives, people buy it, and then, you know, potentially the next week it gets nerfed all of a sudden, now the gun's not viable anymore. So So it does make you think, right? And I feel like this has been a thing with Infinity Ward before, is it not? Where the gun is particularly good. There's a really powerful gun, and then, you know, Blueprint arrives, and they manage to sell some skins for it, and then shortly afterwards they nerf it into Oblivion, and then all of a sudden you've got to buy the next Blueprint to the next gun that's good. So I don't know if that's like a deliberate ploy here, but you know, nonetheless, it would be pretty frustrating if, for those of you who have bought these, on the whole, pretty damn nice camos, it's all of a sudden not relevant anymore because the Vaznev isn't the gun to use. So I doubt that's going to be the case. I imagine it still will be. All the pros will decide, you know what, let's not even bother playing on this new patch, right? Let's just, you know, chalk that up and let's just play what we've played on before, because, you know, I can understand the pros being set in their ways a fair bit, but especially this time of year, right? If it was Major 3 going into Major 4 and they were like, no, you know, we want to keep the Vaznev and all this, I'd be like, you know, come on, adapt with the game. But, you know, we are halfway through the Major 5 qualifiers pretty much, and there's champs just after that. I can understand that the pros decided, you know what, we actually don't want to change this up. So that's probably what will happen, but if it is significant, it does make some questions, you know, it does raise some questions, especially when we had the likes of Shotzzy making plays like this a few weeks ago. You guys remember middle of March, he was doing all this crazy stuff with the Vel, and, you know, his Vel class, his MP7 class was getting quite a lot of traction because he was absolutely cooking people with it in ranked play. Now, and in certain situations, certain hardpoints, this definitely looks viable. Now, fundamentally, right, if the certain hardpoints that I'm talking about are close range ones, then will the Vaznev NERF actually be affected there anyway, just because it's a maximum damage range increase? But there might be some debate that these weapons could be more viable now, so definitely one to look at and see what happens on this over the next 24 hours. The other thing I wanted to mention, there is a new map in the game, unfortunately. It's Alboran Hatchery. So apparently this is just ripped straight from the campaign, and from what I can tell, it looks like at least half of this looks like just straight up vacant from COD 4. This building looks like vacant. I know that there's probably, it's a little bit different. The courtyard isn't quite the same. The internals of this building don't seem quite like what vacant was. And also the bomb location isn't in the same place, but it's actually, well, not too dissimilar. We'll see in a second. But, and this element seems like a bit like vacant. I don't know if this is based on vacant or whatever, but it feels like it. But there's an additional part of the map here over on the right-hand side. So I don't really understand this map, right? It looks like, as it probably has been, ripped from campaign. There's no lanes here. It's just a complete mess. I don't think this map is going to be good. It has only 5 hardpoints though, so that maybe is one positive thing. And I mean, look, as I say, nothing's going to change from now to the end of the season, but it's more about next year at this point. We don't necessarily know what next year is going to bring, what game is going to arrive come November or whenever it's going to come out, whether it is essentially going to be a continuation here, but I don't think this map's going to get it to competitive. These are the 2 control capture points. So, I mean, I don't really know what to say about that. And then these are the bomb site locations, which is just pretty remarkable. Okay, so the bomb spawns over here. That's the attacker spawn. The A bomb is between these like silos over on the right hand side, and then the B bomb is here outside this building. So I don't know what to think about this. I don't think it's going to be played, but wanted to mention it regardless because it's pretty remarkable stuff. Other big talking point of the day was around the Rookie of the Year for this season. Obviously, it's a bit of a no-brainer right now, but there are 2 clear candidates, and often the last couple of years we've had a couple of clear candidates. For example, Cold War, it was Insight or Standy, one of the 2. I don't believe the CDL actually gave out an official Rookie of the Year that season, but you know, Standy did a great job with Minnesota Rokkr. I would have probably given it to Insight from the Toronto side because, you know, they both won events, but Insight was around a bit longer and had probably slightly more impact on the way that team went, but still, both were ideal candidates. This season, I mean, last season it was Pred, obviously, hands down, not even a question, and this year, we've got a few candidates, right, it's got to be said. I feel like Joe Thieves is quite an interesting one, just because I think he's been better than maybe people talk about him as being, and I do expect him to be in the CDL next season. I'd be surprised. I think Guerrillas might well think about building around him. Depends on what happens, right, because they might disappear, another org might come in, you know, the Saudi Arabian Guerrillas or, you know, whatever is going to happen next season, which probably isn't going to be the case. But there's other options from Boston as well. The 2 clear top candidates are very obvious, but I will say it's kind of interesting that, so I believe there was 10 coaches from the CDL that voted in this, and Scrap picked up 49 points, which means that 1 coach did not vote for Scrap as their number 1, which is pretty interesting stuff. So anyway, Scrappy number 1, 49 points. Ghosty got 40 points in 2nd place. Then it goes down to Hicksy, which in fairness is a pretty good argument as well, because he did win an event as his first time of asking with Toronto. Then it goes Beans, then Kremp, and then I imagine Jonas Thieves isn't too far behind. But to me, it's pretty clearly a two-horse race here because Scrappy's been ridiculously good. I know that he's going to win the Rookie of the Year, probably. Depends. If Ghosty wins, like, because Ghosty's clear second here, despite the fact that he hasn't, you know, he's obviously made a massive impact for OpTic, but they haven't won anything yet. Scrappy won an event and was the MVP, and quite clearly is the MVP, and he's in the conversation for MVP for the entire season. We'll see the numbers for that here in a second. So I think Ghosty's going to have to do a lot, right, to overtake Scrappy here. If Ghosty wins champs, what do you guys think about that? Like, you know, champs in your rookie season, that would be a very interesting debate to be had there because Scrappy's been the better player. I would say he probably still will be the better player from now to the end of the year, but if Ghosty has effectively more achievements at the end of the season, that's a debate to be had. But it's obviously going to be hard to look past Scrappy, and I did mention the other day, like when we were doing the MVP voting ladders, and I was like, how is Scrappy not getting voted into the top 5? Because I certainly put him there. I probably had him 5th to be fair, and now I'd probably put him even higher after this most recent week he's had. But look at these numbers on the season. 99, like based on the numbers, and I don't think I've ever seen a card like this quite from a rookie, where in 5 of the 9 categories, he's 99 rated. He's the best of any AR in 5 of the 9 categories. Kills per 10, damage per 10, in both hardpoint and control. Damage and search and destroy as well, actually, is ridiculous. And kills per 10 in hardpoint and control. And then, you know, deaths, hill time, first blood, still pretty good. Kills per round in search is up there as well. So, I mean, yeah, these numbers are absolutely ridiculous. It's got to be said. And, I mean, look, he's probably going to win the Rookie of the Year. I think that's relatively clear. Could he even win the MVP of the season? I don't think he's too far off that conversation if Toronto bounce back and win another event from now to the end of the year. And if Scrappy gets another MVP award for the season and wins 2 events, like, you know, you've probably got to give it his way, to be honest. Now, just to close up with here, thought it was pretty funny. So Methodz is looking back at what we saw at the start of the video with Tim the Tapman, the Nick Mercs, the potential Scump operator, and Methodz says they need to release a Mount Rushmore or Legends operator back in Call of Duty. Imagine being able to play as Scump, Nadeshot, Crim, Carver, Formal, and of course myself. So, you know, obviously he's joking around here, right? Like, he's looking at the greatest of all time. It's kind of funny that all of these guys have played for some point or another for OpTic, even Zinni back in the World War II days, and is of course personally on OpTic as well. Like, who do you have as your Mount Rushmore? Because obviously Methodz doesn't include Clay here, right? Which I do think is a little bit of, you know, for me it's a bit of a miss. If you're going to have a Mount Rushmore of cards, obviously Scump, Nade have got to be on there. I would say Clay has got to be on there as well. Just the, you know, the legacy that Clay has from back in the day, the amount of teams he's played on, the 3 World Championships, like, he's got to be there. And you can debate on the other ones. Obviously Crim's got to be there as well, winningest player ever. So I think my Mount Rushmore, if I had to choose 4, would probably be Scump, Nade, Crim, Clay, which maybe is controversial because you want to put Karma on there, you want to put Formal on there, maybe you want to put others on there, but still, there's a maybe big timer, right? There's a debate to be had. But obviously Methodz doesn't mention Clay, so Clay, I mean, obviously there was replies such as this when Methodz is including himself, and then Clay comes back with this one: who invited my bad blood? Bro thinks he's on the team. So, you know, just trying to roast Methodz a bit, and I think successfully so, just because I imagine Clay saw this and was like, damn, Methodz already mentioned himself before me, like, you know, come on. So I thought this is all pretty entertaining, and people were throwing it back to this one as well, where Clay had a pretty funny response to Methodz back in the Cold War days, when Methodz was benched by Ultra and the X4 had just been GA'd from the game. And very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
No. No, don't do this to Ant. Oh, don't do this to Ant.
Listen up, London. He ain't going anywhere because he is through to the semi-finals, my friend. You know what, Shotzzy? Scrap the questions. What have you got to say to London?
I don't have anything to say.
That's great.
We're being absolutely rude.
Look at him.
I'm gonna be bringing the same, just the same individual skilled player, or just the same thing, or no.
It's all right.
Riley, you gotta turn it off, man. You gotta turn it off. Oh man,
Dude,
but now he's great.
That is so funny. He said, I have
got
nothing to say.
I got nothing to say.
I have nothing to say. That's so good.